My job as a group managing director was to create the space for the team to be able to perform, to give them the tools. It's an act of servitude. You are not there to micromanage or tell people what to do. You've got to listen and take on board what they want. And I think a lot of people get that the wrong way around. They think you're lording it from on high, telling people what to do. Maybe in years gone by, that style might well have been applicable, but I think now, every day, I'm still grateful for the opportunity to serve, and that's how I see it, servitude.
So today we are with Colin Rowley, who's the Group Managing Director of Drawn & Dixon, who has quite a unique story about his family business, which I won't ruin just now. But I think this is a fascinating story which I can't wait to hear. But do you maybe want to start by telling us, Colin, like who you are and how you end up sitting in that chair today?
Yeah, it's a rock and roll tale. I've been involved with the company since 1990.
This is a family company.
It is a family company, or it certainly was a family company until I bought it in 2007. I joined, as I say, in 1990. I was working in the stores, and the company's doing today what it has largely done, which is to supply hazardous area equipment into explosive atmospheres. Our primary purpose is to get everyone home safe. That's the driver. That's what's motivating me. But it wasn't always like that. Back in 1990, when I joined the family company, my dad was the owner, managing director. I was really looking for a job that would allow me access to a van because I was playing drums in a thrash metal band. But I really enjoyed it. Working in the stores, working in the stock control, doing the delivery driving as well. So yeah, when I joined the company, we were based in Dunblane. There was about 7 or 8 of us, I think, at that time in Dunblane.
And were you still working in the stores in the family business?
No, at that point I had become the sales rep for the Aberdeen area. As we started to get more inquiries and more business and more revenue, it became apparent that we'd be better to be able to service the local market in Aberdeen by having an Aberdeen operation. So we did that. We opened up in Aberdeen and I became the branch manager. And then in 1997, rather tragically off the back of the Dunblane shooting, my dad, who was very good friends with Gwen Mayer, the teacher who was sadly killed, my dad needed some support, and I was appointed a director more or less overnight. And understandably, my dad needed time out to process that, and he needed to do that with people he could trust. And I think as a son, yes, you should be able to trust your son to be able to look after things on your behalf and try and do the best you can to make things improve and run smoothly. And that's really when it kicked in terms of going from a job really where I could earn a couple of quid to satisfy whatever lifestyle I was living at that time. Really started to think clearly about career, trajectory, ambitions to take over above and beyond.
And you'd not been thinking about that before?
No, not really, no.
So it wasn't a given that you were going to inherit the company?
No, I think maybe from the outside a few people might have looked at that, but I think that's quite a unique driver for me, in that when everybody's looking at you as the boss's son, there's an expectation that you're bestowed with some privilege, which you are, but I think you have to work that little bit harder to prove yourself and demonstrate that you're not just, some little entitled brat coming in to spoil everybody else's fun. And I'd like to think that over those years I've been able to prove that and demonstrate to people that I've got a work ethic, and I will get heavily involved in it, get my hands dirty, working from the stores, being a van driver, being a sales rep, being a director.
So how old were you when you were appointed to the board?
Well, 97, I would have been 25 years old.
And you've been in the business, what, 6 years by that point?
7 years, 7 years. So it was a real baptism of fire. I didn't really know what a director did. I didn't get a training course. Nobody gives you a manual. You just said, there you go, poof, into the deep end.
Could you explain, in your opinion, what a director does?
A director, for me, one of the things I like to think on now is that my job is, as a director, as a group managing director today, my job is to create the space for the team to be able to perform, to give them the tools. It's an act of servitude. You are not there to micromanage or tell people what to do. You've got to listen and take on board what they want. And if you can deliver on that and facilitate that, then that's your role. It's an act of servitude, and I think a lot of people get that the wrong way around. They think it's you're lording it from on high, telling people what to do. Maybe in years gone by, that style might well have been applicable, but I think now, every day I'm still grateful for the opportunity to serve, and that's how I see it, servitude, but in a good way. I don't mean in a slavish way. I just think that making people happy and trying to give them what they want as best you can, I get a lot of pleasure out of that.
And so you did that for how long until your dad decided to exit, and how did that come about?
I think probably from about 2003 onwards, I really started to consider what I wanted to do in my career. I'd combined that with night school studies. Went back and I did degree, HNCs in accounts and bookkeeping and business management. So all the things that I should have done at school, which I didn't. I didn't go on to uni or college after I left school. I really had to knuckle down and buck myself up in terms of just starting to learn some of the theories that were underpinning what I didn't know at that time was about the business performance and directorial performance that's linked to that. In 2003, I got made the MD. And that was where it kind of clicked into gear in terms of.
How old were you at that point?
23. I would have been 31. So
it's quite young to be in charge of how many staff at that point in turnover.
At that time, I want to say now. I've looked back. We were probably running at about 180 people, give or take.
That's quite young to be in charge of all that.
I like to think I'm still young now in charge of it is, but I think looking back on it now.
Did you feel was it overwhelming? Was it overwhelming?
Yeah, it was really, really overwhelming. At that time, the company we quite an old-fashioned approach to life. The accountants and the advice that my dad was receiving was very much if you make the money, spend the money. And one of the challenges that you could see with my dad and I was this divergence of what we were aspiring to achieve. My dad was looking at retirement and one eye on exit. I'm looking at how we grow the business. My dad, bless him, had never really invested in himself. My dad bet everything. He put his mortgage, his career, his reputation, everything on the line to buy the business. I was lucky, Dad had already built that and secured that for me. So I didn't take the risks that my dad had to take. But you could see that spending money, and quite rightly and understandably taking it out to bolster his own lifestyle choices later on for himself, that made absolute sense because he hadn't put anything in the early stages. So it's quite right, his ball, he bounces it. From where I was sat, I could see a balance sheet where we had this reasonably quickly growing company, but it was funding on an inverted pyramid. The work, the support at the bottom in terms of how the business was structured and geared was all wrong. All we needed was one bad debt, one big contract loss, and you could see the company was at risk. So we had these conflicting approaches, and that was leading to strife within the business. But it became obvious that we, two captains, one ship, and there was a divergence. We were wanting different things, and neither of us were particularly wrong, but what was going to be confusing for people is my dad going in one direction, me going in another, and asking people to try and, bridge that gap for us. Yeah. Not fair on the team, not fair on my dad, not fair on me. So, as I say, at that point, probably 2003, it became much more about how do I take my dad, and indeed my mum and my sister out of the business completely. So by that time I was beginning to hatch the idea that I would buy the company out from them, which again is a little bit unusual.
And did you have a big safe of cash that you were going to use to buy this?
No.
So how were you planning on doing that?
One of the things that I had was shareholding in the business, so I had paper. And when you approach the banks for borrowing to do a deal to acquire, what we decided to do was I would roll paper for paper and I would put that in as effectively as equity. And we would...
Could you explain that a bit more?
So the company was worth a number, and My shareholding represented, I think, 14-15% of that number. What I did was I went to the banks and said, would you lend me the other remaining 85%, and made the business case for that. So they were happy with my paper element, making up just enough, a bit like a deposit on a house, that effectively I've got 15% of this paper that was rolled into this new co. So effectively we created a top co, and which I called MTIP, making the impossible possible. And anybody who's ever bought out their mother, father and sister will know exactly what that means. And at that point it was a question of the top co raising the funding to then buy out the limited company, John and Dixon. And that's what we did.
So quick question on that. So obviously you needed to take financial and legal advice about this.
Yes.
And so there's the company accountants.
Yes.
There's your dad's friends who've obviously advised him his entire life. Where did you go and how did you start?
I actually did clear that one with my dad. I spoke to the company's lawyers and the company's accountants, and my dad sought his own advice and his own, so he got his own lawyers and his own financial advisors as well. And that was when the process started. So that was 2006, 2007. So by the time we actually got round the table to make a serious offer, because it wasn't just a question of my aspiration to buy the company, there's also the small matter of mum and dad and my sister had a number in mind that they would like to achieve.
And did the numbers tie up?
No. We'd initially I thought they had. We'd shaken hands on a deal. Somebody came in and trumped that offer. Somebody
being another bidder?
Another company.
Did you know they were coming? Were they out of left field, or were they? Did you?
Completely left field. It got a bit bumpy. That's an understatement. So the family wanted me to look at this counter offer in a great deal of detail, and that was when it all.
As managing director.
As managing director.
So you're analysing and evaluating a counter offer as managing director, whilst also putting in your own bid.
Yes.
And who's analysing yours? They are.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, one number was bigger than another. So.
Whose was that?
The counter offer. So
yeah, you are sitting here.
I am sitting here.
So how did that happen?
I wasn't happy, and I did say to the family that I felt there were terms within the proposed counter offer that were not as good as mine. So although the number looked lower to begin with, by the time you take off debt, by the time you took off the fact that the family would have been required to put money into this new co that was being formed to take it forward, I didn't think there was much between them. But you know what? Some people get struck by the big headline number. They don't look really into the detail, and so it got fractious to the point where effectively the family said, "It's a drag along. You're going." Just to add insult to injury, I was renovating my house. My wife and I were also about to adopt, planning to adopt, and we needed to go to a panel to become approved parents. So we were in a race against time, against the building warrant, because the social work weren't going to put any young family into effectively a building site. So we were trying to get the house completed, trying to become adopted parents, trying to get ourselves into a position where we could finalise the heads of terms and deal with a potential counter offer.
Whilst managing a business, which is thinking, where's the future? And
manage a business. So yeah, that was kind of stressful. So the whole thing got drawn out way beyond where it needed to, in my opinion. But I got to an impasse. I effectively was resigning, and we got to the point where actually a guy called Jeff Meek at French Duncan, or McCabe's as they were then, gave me some great advice. And you know, he was basically saying, look, you're about to cut your nose off to spite your face here. I think there's a compromise. And what he proposed I thought was excellent, and it got us over the line. And what he proposed was, the effect was, look, that big hairy headline number that your dad's wowed by this alternative offer, the company will be worth that, just not today. The funds you can raise are down here, the counter offer's up there. Why don't we put it in place that you give them what you can meet right now with the heads of terms, and put in an IOU through these class of shares to bridge the gap? And that's what we did. And that allowed mum, dad and sister a chance to take some money off the table and effectively earn the rest out at a period later on down the line when the company had actually achieved that value. And those class of shares still exist to this day.
So I mean that's an incredible. First off, congratulations on acquiring the company. Secondly, congratulations on surviving that stressful period. But I mean, it's an incredible story. Would you do anything differently? So if there's someone who's working in a family business watching this, and basically the dad's about to retire and they're in your situation, is there any advice you would give them about what would you do differently, or what advice would you give?
I would definitely advise on buying out family members, because one of the other things that when I tell that story, people say, well, you know what, I can't believe your mum or dad wouldn't just give you the company. Like, why the hell should they? They wouldn't do that with anybody else. What's so special about mum and dad that they're not allowed to have money for their retirement and look after their longevity? That's just bloody selfish. That's just stupid. So when it comes to business, I think you do have to make that distinction that family members, while they're family members in their blood, when it comes to a business transaction, it's really clean. My mum and dad and my sister don't have any, there's no parts of it that are unclear. There's nothing that's fuzzy about the deal. As and when we come to settle the differential between the original purchase price and what the IOU says, everybody knows where they stand. They know what the number is, they know what the value is, they know what the events are that will trigger that, they know exactly how much they'll get, they'll know what they'll benefit out of that. It's clean. Now, if I'm taking this business to my conclusion where I exit, had we not tidied that up, can you imagine? Let's say somebody pays me gazillions of pounds and you're sat there going, well, what do I give my sister? What do I give my mum and dad? You're left there to your own discretion.
Families are broken up over these kind of things.
Absolutely. So however hard it was, and however much I disagreed with mum and dad probably at that time, actually the sensible thing was to do it that way. So I think being clear with families what the expectations are. Imagine, if you will, a father who's been bought out but not had any money, and the first year comes in and says, listen, you know, I've worked all my days, can you see me right? I just want a wee dividend just to get me to Tenerife for a fortnight. No problem. And you pay that dividend. The second year they come in, the company's done a bit better this year, son. Yes, it has. Well, look, rather than going Tenerife, I'd like to do a round the world cruise this year, son. Well, obviously I'll make sure that happens. I'll pay the dividend, I'll get you around. So where does that end? At what point does it become, is there any chance I can replace my Ferrari this year, son? And you're continuously and perpetually held over on this situation where they're neither in nor out the business, and you neither own outright the business or in full control of what you need to do with that business. And I think that's a valuable lesson for any family, whether it's father, sons, daughters, uncles, brothers, whatever. Having a clear exit strategy with your family members, a clear succession plan. And I know plenty of family companies that work very well, where, you know, sons and daughters are groomed quite specifically to succeed one family member after another. And for those companies, that works really well. I think they're very clear as well about what it is they want to do. I'm not knocking that. I just think that for most companies, that's not reality. Most people want to know what their exit plan. And that's the other piece of advice is, I had a very clear exit plan when I came in. So it wasn't just a question of, I want to buy a company because it satisfies this particular argument. It settles the argument about who's in control. There's no point in buying into the business unless you know what you want to do with it as well. So don't buy it for the wrong motivations. Don't buy it for the wrong reasons. If I buy this company, that settles the argument. Yeah, so what? What are you going to do with it? And that comes back to that point Jeff Meat made, which is, why are you cutting your nose off to spite your face? Do you want this or not? Because this is actually how we're going to get this thing over the line, if you want it. If not, off you go.
You know, Colin, you know, this channel is, you know, we interview people that fit into two categories: industry experts or epic entrepreneurs. And I think you're the first person we've spoken to that pretty much has managed to bridge both of them and given industry expertise from an epic entrepreneur perspective. So thank you very much indeed for sharing the journey of your idea. You have a very unique perspective on that, and we wish you all the very best with the business going forward.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.